Today there are 14 new cases of COVID-19 in the community. All of these are in Auckland, and it takes our total number of cases in this outbreak to 983. There are also 3 cases of COVID-19 in our managed isolation facilities. Again today, early on, it's clear that all our current new cases are linked to existing cases. An analysis of yesterday's 16 cases showed that 3 were infectious in the community, creating 10 exposure events. However, these were all largely essential businesses such as petrol stations and dairies, the visits that we would expect people to be doing, and all prior to when people were notified they were a contact. As has already been reported, a worker at the So Auckland Hotel managed isolation facility in Auckland has tested positive for COVID-19 as part of routine surveillance testing. There is a potential link with the community case, so at this stage it's not being considered a result of in-facility MIF transmission, and ESR is rerunning the whole genome sequencing today, which should confirm that case is linked to the existing outbreak. We know the worker was fully vaccinated and is also now in quarantine.
Some good news just out of Auckland International Airport. I can confirm that the first batch of doses that we purchased from Denmark touched down a little over an hour ago. These 250,000 doses, along with the 275,000 doses that we purchased from Spain last week, means that there is now nothing holding back our COVID-19 vaccination campaign. 62,000 doses were administered across the country yesterday. 26,793 of those were in Auckland. That means nationwide, of our eligible population, those aged 12 plus, more than 70% have now received at least one dose of the vaccine. 36% have received their second dose and are therefore fully vaccinated. However, underneath those numbers sits some challenges that we still need to highlight. 48% of Māori have had their first dose, 23% their second. 62% of Pacific peoples have had their first dose, and 32% have had their second. We're doing very well in the older age brackets. 90% of our 65 pluses have had their first dose, and 76% have had their second dose. For those aged between 40 to 64, those numbers are coming along nicely. 76% have had their first dose and 39% their second. So these are good numbers, they're encouraging numbers, but we need to see those continuing to climb. For those under the age of 40, we've got a lot of work to do there. And so please, if you haven't received your first dose and you're not booked in, please make sure you're booking in. There is a lot of availability of space in the vaccine program. It is easy to book. Bookmyvaccine.nz is the way to do it. It's easy to do, and we are asking all New Zealanders who have not booked in to make sure that you're booking in to get your vaccine. By the end of this week, we want everyone across metropolitan Auckland to have had the opportunity to have had their first dose, and we are making every effort to make sure that happens. The Northern Response vaccination centres are allowing walk-ins at all of their community vaccination sites. The number of pharmacies joining the vaccine rollout continues to rise. There are currently 51 pharmacies across metropolitan Auckland carrying out vaccines, and so far they've delivered over 170,000 vaccinations. A further 81 pharmacies will be joining the program very soon. At GP clinics, 118 sites are live, and a further 109 are being brought on board. As the Prime Minister revealed previously, we are launching our first vaccination buses tomorrow. Details are being finalised, but they'll basically be acting as pop-up vaccination centres to deliver outside of the bus to ensure that appropriate social distancing can be observed. We'll be taking the vaccination buses to areas where vaccination numbers are low, or where we know communities might be finding it more difficult to access the existing vaccination services we're providing. We're looking to extend this program to up to 12 buses to make sure that we can reach communities across the wider Auckland area over the coming weeks. So we want to make it as easy as possible for everyone to get vaccinated, and particularly so if you're in Auckland. It is our best protection as we plan to move down alert levels. On to managed isolation and quarantine. As I indicated here a couple of weeks ago, we did have to make a very difficult decision to pause the further release of vouchers for managed isolation in light of the growing number of community cases we were needing to accommodate in our MIQ facilities. And I do want to acknowledge again now, as I did then, that the challenge that poses a significant challenge for Kiwis who have been looking to return home and for others who have a good reason for wanting to come to New Zealand. So today I have some further good news. I can confirm that pause will be lifted from Monday the 20th of September. The local pressure on our MIQ system has started to ease, and we do have rooms available between now and Christmas. The first 3,000 or so of those rooms will be released from Monday. 4,000 rooms a fortnight will be released in stages over these months, as is our usual practice. As I signalled previously, the way people apply for these rooms will change. So, some critical times. From 8 a.m. on Monday, New Zealand time, the lobby will be open, and the room releases will start from 9 a.m. The whole system is designed to improve the experience for those using the Managed Isolation Allocation System, MIAS, and to level the playing field. But I do want to stress again, it isn't a silver bullet, and we are fully expecting that there will be more demand for the rooms than there are rooms available. While we make it easier for people who are fully vaccinated to come into New Zealand, while we're looking at the options to do that from next year, we do expect that pressure on our managed isolation facilities will continue through at least until the end of this year. More than 170,000 people have come back into New Zealand through that system. That is a much larger portion than other comparable countries have accommodated through their managed isolation, but there of course are still those unavoidable constraints. So the lobby system is a big change, and all the detail on how it will work will be up on the MIQ website shortly. But I want to make a couple of quick points. It's not a first in, first served model. So if you join any time between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. New Zealand time, that will secure you an ability to participate in the process. Everybody who enters the lobby during that time will have an equal chance of getting an invitation to book. People will be held in the lobby until the room release begins. Then people will be automatically and randomly moved into a queue. When they get to the front of the queue, they'll be gradually allowed through the website in order to secure a room. There's no need to refresh the website regularly anymore. There's no limit on the number of people that can enter the lobby, thus registering that they are trying to secure a room. Once all the rooms have been taken, all of the available rooms that have been taken, the lobby will be closed. Anybody who is left in the queue or left in the lobby will be informed that the bookings have been completed for the day. That is until the next tranche of rooms is ready, and we will signal when those rooms are being released so that people will be able to come back to the site and take part in that process again. A few very important points. It is important that people know their preferred flight route and select the correct date for arrival once they are in the system. We don't want people to just grab any date if there aren't flights available that will get them there at that date. That could potentially see us wasting rooms. When we've got demand at such high levels, we don't want to see that happen. So people need to check the flight checker on the website before the lobby opens and make sure they're selecting an appropriate date. For people who are wanting to travel from Australia, Monday's voucher release will not include red flights from Australia at this time, so they won't be able to participate on Monday. However, we are planning another voucher release in September, which we do expect people in Australia to be able to access. We'll be able to confirm that when a decision on the Trans-Tasman bubble, which we're expecting to be able to make in the next week, when we make that decision, we will signal the availability of red flights for people coming from Australia. So for people who, and I also just want to remind anybody overseas, Australia or anywhere else, that where there is a need for urgent travel, you don't have to chance your luck with the MIAS booking system. There are criteria for urgent travel, and we have rooms ring-fenced for that. So if you meet those criteria, if you do need an emergency allocation, please check the website to see whether you meet those criteria and put an application in for those. If you are successful going through that process, then you won't have to go through the MIAS booking system.
I want to emphasise the vast majority of doctors and other health professionals support our vaccination program. More recently, this has sparked a deliberate grassroots initiative of doctors who want to help answer questions that people may have about the vaccine. This is called Doctors Stand Up for Vaccination. Within less than 40 hours of this being promulgated on social media, there were more than 2,000 signatures of support from doctors, and within a week, over 4,500. There's huge support from our health professionals, including doctors, for our vaccination program, and just a very small number who don't agree with the program. There have also been claims on social media that people's natural immunity or vitamin C are sufficient to fight COVID-19, so there's no need to either get tested or indeed get vaccinated. This is not the case. This is an infectious virus that can cause serious and ongoing health problems, not just the acute infectious illness, but, as you know, long COVID symptoms. And so on to an update about treatments for COVID-19 in New Zealand. Yesterday, I noted my warning about potential misuse of ivermectin, which hasn't been shown to be safe or effective for the treatment of COVID-19. However, even though there have been relatively few cases in New Zealand, we are up to date in terms of our knowledge and use of appropriate treatments. We have good processes in place to assess emerging and new treatments, and a fast and proven approval process when we decide on which ones we want to use here. Just a note on how the main medications and treatments for COVID-19 work. COVID-19 infections cause two major issues in people. First of all is the viral attack on the body and the harm that causes in and of itself. And the second is that in some cases the virus can trigger an immune reaction, which can cause further problems. So new treatments are now being investigated and indeed used to cover both these areas, and they concentrate on three domains. First of all, antiviral drugs that limit the ability of the virus to replicate and thrive in the body. An example here is remdesivir, which has been used for quite a while internationally and is being used in New Zealand. There are then, secondly, medicines that calm the immune system overreaction that is prompted in some patients, and particularly those who end up very unwell and in ICU. An example here is dexamethasone, which is a standard and widely used steroid, and it's been part of our routine treatment protocols here for some time for people who are very unwell in ICU. And then third, there are antibody treatments that help the body fight the virus. Studies have shown that one of these, a monoclonal antibody called tocilizumab, may help hospitalise patients by reducing the severity of their infection and the length of time they require in hospital. Pharmac recently completed consulting with clinicians on funding tocilizumab for the treatment of moderate to severe COVID-19 in New Zealand. They will make a decision soon about its ongoing funding, but in the meantime, it has already been used and funded by Pharmac for treatment in more than 30 patients through an exceptions-based process. There are several other monoclonal antibodies in trials or approved overseas under emergency authorisation, and Pharmac is actively discussing those with the manufacturers and suppliers. Two new treatments are showing the most promise. The first is rollout, which is showing benefit in the early treatment of COVID-19 and can help cases from developing. It complements rather than replaces vaccination, as all these treatments do. An application has been made to MedSafe in the last couple of weeks, and the UK counterpart of MedSafe has actually approved that treatment in the UK. MedSafe is looking at all the evidence to see if this is a medication we will want to use in New Zealand, and then Pharmac will move on the funding of it. A second promising monoclonal antibody treatment is sotrovimab. This is another one that is similar to rollout, and it complements rather than replaces vaccination. Some good data coming through from evidence in trials, and MedSafe has not yet received an application. However, the Ministry is engaging with Pharmac to already explore potential supply options and encourage an application for approval through to MedSafe. In the meantime, any of these medications can be prescribed by a doctor if they are indicated and if available here. Even if there's not an approval through MedSafe, they can be prescribed off-label. We have a technical advisory group of clinicians who meet weekly since late August, and it's providing updated advice to us all the time on emerging treatments. Finally, a shout out today for our midwives, in particular those working in Tamaki Makaurau during Alert Level 4. As you would imagine, much of their work is face-to-face and with the usual protections and use of PPE to ensure that pregnant women get the care and services they need. Happily, babies don't know it's lockdown and they continue arriving. It's timely to remind anyone in the country who is expecting a baby about the importance of getting vaccinated. We have seen some unvaccinated pregnant women arriving in hospital with COVID-19 quite unwell as a result of the virus. It's now very clear from experience globally and our experience here, with a large number of pregnant people now vaccinated, there are no additional safety concerns with getting the COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine. It is safe at any stage in pregnancy, and vaccinating during pregnancy also helps protect your baby, as there is evidence that infants can get antibodies of the virus through cord blood and then once they are born through breast milk. Most importantly, the vaccine will keep pregnant women out of hospital and indeed, if they're very unwell, out of ICU. Birth is a time to celebrate, not a time to worry about the effects of COVID-19.